Welcome to the Galloway Show. I've been missing for a couple of weeks and I apologize for that. I've been traveling and that posed technical challenges that proved insurmountable. But I'm back and with a packed agenda. There were more people waiting for this show to start than were actually watching the live broadcast on Talk TV, Rupert Murdoch's multi-million pound enterprise. Just think about that. This show is brought to you at absolutely no expense. Just me and my good wife and my pal Simon in Manchester. We're the only people involved here. So please forgive any technical deficiencies that you might spot, but you'll need to be sharp-eyed in order to spot them. I'm going to talk for, I don't know, half an hour or so, and then I'll take your questions, which Simon will put up on the screen for me. This show is, of course, entirely free to air. It's free to make, it's free to air. But one of its purposes is to get support for the mother of all talk shows, which continues to broadcast on all platforms possible on Sunday nights at 7 p.m. London. We have finally secured a sponsor for the mother of all talk shows. And so the show has been saved. If you were one of those that kept us afloat when all props were kicked from underneath us, then I metaphorically take my hat off to you. You will be enshrined in a roll of honor that will be published of all those who gave when we needed it most. If you're one of those that continued watching and didn't even send a single dollar, well, I hope you're suitably embarrassed. But we're fundraising now so that we can bring back the midweek moats. Instead of this no-budget Galloway show, we'll have a midweek moats just like the Sunday night moats with guests and 3 cameras and all of the paraphernalia and studio facilities that we don't have here. So please do give. You can most easily give through Super Chat on the YouTube channel. Just go to Super Chat and make whatever donation you like in whatever denomination you like, whatever currency you like. And you can also go to moats.tv, the website, and go to the donate button. Let me press on because there's plenty to talk about. The first thing I want to raise is the situation this day, this hour in Pakistan. Imran Khan, the lawful and rightful Prime Minister of Pakistan, was, you'll recall, turfed out of office in an American organized regime change coup. I said at the time that no good would come of it, that only trouble would ensue. And my goodness, in Pakistan today, there has been plenty of trouble. Imran Khan's supporters number in the millions, tens of millions, and millions of them are on the streets of Pakistan right now in every town, city, and rural hamlet. They are on what's called the Azadi March, the March for Freedom. The march, for those who were not bludgeoned, browbeaten, tear-gassed, and even killed on the way to Islamabad today, have reached Islamabad in unprecedented numbers, led by the aforementioned Imran Khan. The Prime Minister taking great risks with his personal security, having earlier highlighted the very real danger of a plot to murder him, is in a container, standing tall, right at the front of a container on wheels, which has gone all the way to Islamabad. People are still arriving in the city, even though the state, led by the stooge government, inserted into Pakistan by the United States of America, led by a fugitive from justice who is in London because of his platelets. Where art thou, platelets, when we need you? Nawaz Sharif, the former Prime Minister, is holed up in Mayfair in a luxury flat, one of many ill-gotten gains from his long periods in power as Prime Minister of Pakistan. He's governing through his brother, Shahbaz Sharif, who is also a fugitive from justice. He's out on bail on serious charges of corruption and money laundering. His son is the chief minister of the most populous province, the Punjab, and he also is wanted by the courts for the very same charges, money laundering and massive corruption. None of these things, a government that reads like the front page of the Police Gazette, has stopped the state behaving like the criminals they are today. And indeed, last night and the night before, when they began illegally, without arrest warrants, raiding people's homes all over Pakistan and taking them away, kicking down doors of eminent people, justices of the courts, retired members of parliament, retired military officers, oftentimes finding only the women in the houses, but that didn't stop them, kicking down the doors of defenseless women and dragging those women off into the night, often in their night clothes. It is a shameful state of affairs, and it's really not clear how the state thinks it can possibly get out of this one. I told you right from the beginning that Imran Khan's demand for elections now was an unbeatable demand. When a prime minister is illegitimately thrown out of office in a foreign coup, who can resist the demand? Elections now. And because he restricted himself to those very words, I was able, as a person who doesn't support Imran Khan or his party, or hitherto I have never done so, I was able to throw whatever weight I've got behind those demands, because clearly, after a coup and with a mass uprising going on in the country, the only way out is for elections now. And what is now clear, and that's why they run in terror from that demand, is that Imran Khan will sweep the country north, south, east, and west, and will probably obtain a more than 3/4 majority, maybe more than that, in the subsequent parliamentary elections when they are held. And that's fine, but Pakistan needs more than new elections. Pakistan needs a revolution. And it may be that a revolution is underway now in that country. This is a country of 220 million people. And in its possession is a large fleet of nuclear weapons. It is one of just 7 countries in the world with the capacity to destroy the entire planet if something were to go wrong. And for the Americans to plunge a country like that into civil war, which is what they have done, is utterly shameless, shameful, and will never be forgotten or forgiven. Of course, the Americans could only do it if they had a 5th column operating within. And they do. And what a 5th column it is. It is what I call the Pakistani establishment, the military establishment, the intelligence establishment, the media oligarchs, and sections at least of the upper reaches of the civil service, which was bestowed by the British with all the forked tongue of Whitehall. This establishment has created this civil war in Pakistan at the behest of the United States of America. And no one can know where all of this is going to end. It is a terrifyingly dangerous situation. Already several people have been killed today, and already the streets of Pakistan look like Gaza on a particularly bad day. Clouds of tear gas are everywhere. Flames are licking the buildings everywhere. Armed police and goons of various descriptions are out clubbing people and beating them within an inch of their life and beyond an inch of their life, as I say, in some cases already. And this is just getting started. Because Imran Khan has not led millions of people to Islamabad for nothing. He's not there just for the show. He's there until the new elections are granted. and sufficient guarantee is given that those elections will be free and fair. If the establishment continue to resist that, they will have to be, and undoubtedly will be, forcibly removed from power. As President Kennedy, God rest his soul, once said, those who make peaceful change impossible make violent change inevitable. And that may very well be the cusp on which we stand in relation to Pakistan. For those who don't know the geography, Pakistan could scarcely be in a more sensitive place. It borders with China, it borders with India, it borders with Iran, and it borders with Afghanistan. It is a massive country with a diaspora of tens, scores of millions all around the world, in every country, including yours. So what's happening there is a very great moment. Not that you would know it from the media coverage, which has been sparse, to say the least, non-existent on most media platforms. Will it have to be the capture of the nuclear weapons base by somebody, perhaps to hold the country ransom by the stooge regime? I don't know what will happen next, but what will it take to get this story into the mainstream media? What will it take to get this story onto the news? They can't drag themselves away from some of the other much less important stories, like the one I'm going to turn to at the end of the broadcast, Partygate and Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer, and whether or not Boris Johnson ate 2 slices of birthday cake in the cabinet room on his birthday last year. But whether it gets on the news or it doesn't, what's happening in Pakistan is of very great importance to you. It will be felt all over the world. And it goes without saying that if Imran Khan gets those new elections, and if, as I suspect, he sweeps the country in those elections, he really better make sure that nothing like this can ever happen again. Pakistan needs to shed its decades of illusions in a country thousands of miles away, which cares nothing about it, namely the United States of America. It has to shake itself free from its British colonial heritage. It is an Asian country. It is a South Asian country. It is a country that has scores of years of friendship with China, and it's time that it bolted itself as firmly as possible to China, so that any attack on Pakistan is an attack on China, and vice versa, as was said in the Pakistani parliament just the other day. The situation is still unclear. The smoke is still rising. The flames are still burning. The people are still dying. I'll give a very full report on this on Sunday on the Mother of All talk shows, and we'll try to find the possibility of interviewing Imran Khan himself on that show. Let me turn to more murder and mayhem in the United States of America. Yesterday in Texas, at a primary school where the children were aged 7 to 11, 19 children were massacred by a lone gunman aged 18. We can't really call him a gunman, can we? He was a gun boy. He was a boy, but he was a boy old enough to buy 2 assault rifles and an array of body armor, with which he invaded a primary school and told all these little children that they were going to die, and proceeded to blow their brains out one by one, splattering the blood of the children on their classmates. He also murdered 2 teachers who bravely came to the defense of the little children in their care. Now, this would be written off as the work of a lone madman, but it raises several important points, even if it was. There appears to be no political or racial motive to this one, unlike last week's in Buffalo, New York, when a white supremacist, again a young teenager, parked his car, calmly got out of it, live streaming himself all the way, and began ruthlessly to murder every black person that he could see. He killed 10 black shoppers and a security guard. He did have a political agenda. He did have a manifesto, though none of the media have allowed us to read it, giving rise, of course, to the most fevered speculation about what was in it. But the Texas massacre of these little children, and for those of us with young children or young grandchildren, it is simply impossible to look at the pictures of the little babies that he murdered. The killing is the latest in a very long line of massacres in schools. Scarcely a week goes by without a killing in an American school. Now, I take no pleasure or schadenfreude whatsoever in discussing this matter. As I've told you before, I'm one of the few people of my political hue who has American blood in his veins. My great-grandmother was an immigrant to Scotland from America when thousands were sailing in the opposite direction. Maybe she got on the wrong boat, but that's what happened. I love the American people. I've traveled extensively there. I have many, many friends there, and even more supporters, and an even bigger audience in the United States. I'm not saying any of this for any reasons of schadenfreude. I take no pleasure in the misery of the American people at all. I just say this, though. When you have this level of problem at home, why are your government roaming the earth to find wars to start, to burn down other people's countries when your own is manifestly on fire, when your own country is in desperate need of healing? Why are you inflicting wounds on other peoples all over the world? Why? And why aren't you asking that question? I see all the crocodile tears from the American politicians in the wake, yet again, these useless thoughts and prayers that they prattle after every one of these massacres. Why don't you ask them, shouldn't we be staying at home to fix our own country when it is so manifestly in need of fixing? Now, I'm not a liberal, and I'm not here to preach that the United States Constitution, which allows citizens to bear arms, needs to be scrapped. That wouldn't be my business in any case. That's the business of the people of America. But I know what the Constitution says. It says that the American people have the right to maintain a militia to defend itself against tyrannical government. It doesn't say a boy can go and buy 2 assault rifles and body armor without anyone even raising a question as to whether this boy is going to murder 19 school children with it in a few weeks or months from now. That's not what the right to bear arms means. The right to bear arms is to have a well-regulated militia. These murderers in Buffalo, in Texas, and in so many other places that I literally don't have time to adumbrate are not part of a militia. They are either madmen or they are insane racists motivated by racial hatred. Oftentimes, they post online their evil and their sickness, and nobody ever seems to pick it up. I read today that the FBI has been illegally spying on 3.5 million Americans. Well, they're obviously spying on the wrong Americans, because they never seem to notice people posting on social media what are only thinly veiled and often not veiled at all threats to carry out murder and mayhem in the towns and cities of America. The families of these 19 children and the families of the two brave teachers will, of course, themselves be disfigured for life by the events of yesterday in that primary school. The broader community will be traumatized for it, by it. The politicians, many of them receiving millions of dollars, and I don't think I'm exaggerating. I saw one today that got $3 million from the National Rifle Association, whose purpose it is to have as many Americans especially buy as many guns, especially as many guns, as they can possibly persuade them to buy. But of course, there's no security guard on the school. He doesn't have a gun. There's multiple entrances to these schools, not only one that is properly barricaded and guarded, as Tulsi Gabbard called for today, by armed security personnel. That would be expensive, we're told. Well, not as expensive as the continued mass murder of America's school children. How expensive is that? Not just in blood, but in treasure to come. Children that would have grown up to be productive members of American society will never grow up, never get married, never have children of their own. So this is not just totally heartbreaking. It is the occasion for the usual tidal wave of guff from the usual suspects in the American government, whether they are right-wing Republicans who are funded to the hilt by the National Rifle Association, or so-called Democrats who are bewailing death by gunfire. 1.5 million people have been shot and killed in America since 1963 and the murder of President Kennedy. 1.5 million Americans have been murdered by other Americans by gunfire, and of course increasingly in significant numbers and in public places like churches, like supermarkets, and like schools. Somebody's got to get a grip of this. But as for the Democratic caterwauling, do they see no connection between their dishing out deadly, murderous violence all over the world, and when they're not dishing it out, they're plotting to dish it out? The plots to murder Castro, the plots to murder Chavez, the plots to murder Maduro, the murder of Iranian leaders, the murder of people that they don't like all over the world. Do they see no connection to their state violence and the violence carried out in that primary school yesterday? Well, I do. You see, if you normalize death and destruction, you normalize it at home just as much as you normalize it abroad. America has become an orgy of violence. An orgy. A Rabelaisian orgy of violence at home and abroad. And it's high time, for your own sake, as well as for the sake of all of the rest of us, that you made the necessary political connection, joined the dots of all of these things. So, as a father of young children myself, and as a grandfather of young children myself, my heart bleeds with the parents of that primary school in Texas, and with the families of those who were murdered in cold blood by another teenager in Buffalo, New York, whilst going about their shopping. Every time I push a trolley around a supermarket since, I've thought of what could happen if we had the misfortune to live in today's United States, that someone could burst in and massacre everyone they could get their hands on. We had a school shooting once, 9,416 days ago in Dunblane. We took immediate action to tighten gun legislation. And in the 9,416 days since, there has not been a single school shooting in Britain. And there are many other countries, like Canada, like Switzerland, where gun ownership is just as high. I'm not against guns. I might even own some myself. But I am against the deranged, the unhinged, the known extremists, at least known if you just checked their Facebook page, being able to tool up with assault rifles that could and have murdered innocents in such numbers. I need to press on, not because these first two issues are not important. In fact, they're much more important than the one to which I turn. But I must turn to it because I live in Britain, at least for the moment, and I have to live under a British government led by Boris Johnson. Now, let me be honest with you right from the start. So-called Partygate leaves me completely unmoved. There's a lot of synthetic sound and fury about what are called parties, but were in fact leaving dues conducted amongst people who were already there in the workplace. They were already at the water cooler together. They were already sitting at their desks together in the workplace. If they stood up and raised a toast to a departing colleague, that's not a party. So I'm not one of those who hypocritically denounces Boris Johnson for the parties that he had when the rest of us were forbidden to party, when the rest of us were forbidden to even touch the face of our departing relatives heading for the other life, when the rest of us were not allowed to sit beside our mothers and console them at the funerals of our fathers, when the rest of us were not allowed to see our wives and our new children in the maternity hospitals, when the rest of us were not allowed to visit our elderly parents in the so-called care homes, careless homes, I call them, when the rest of us were not allowed to sit on a park bench, when the rest of us were not allowed to sit on the grass in a park. We had to exercise if we were in the park, or pretend to exercise. This whole period of madness through which we have just lived is replete with such insanity that I cannot get myself worked up about Boris Johnson's birthday cake. What I say is that Boris Johnson must go, not because of a birthday cake, but because, as a direct result of actions taken by him, our people very soon will not be able to have bread. Our people very soon will not be able to fill up their cars with petrol and diesel. Our people very soon will not be able to turn the heating on in our country because of the gigantic increase in the price of gas, a self-inflicted wound inflicted on us by our own government, which is supposed to take care of us. I want Boris Johnson gone for 1,000 reasons, not least his handling of the pandemic, not least because of his handling of our foreign affairs, but mainly because he has taken us to the precipice of economic disaster. An economic disaster that, if we are not lucky, could have the streets of Britain looking like the streets of Pakistan come next winter. That's not what I want to see. It's the very last thing I want to see. I believe in social peace. I believe in order. I believe in democracy. But the democratic system in Britain is almost broken. The credibility of the political leaders in Britain, all of them, Keir Starmer, Boris Johnson, whoever leads the Liberal Democrats these days, Nicola Sturgeon, the separatist leader who has brought Scotland to ruin, all of them, all of the political class, all of the MPs, sunk in vice and corruption, financial corruption, personal corruption. Hardly a week goes by without an MP being on trial or being arrested, being charged. Hardly a week goes by without a scandal about personal conduct appearing in the newspapers. In the latest one, in the House of Commons bars, all those bars, I never set foot in one of them, not one, in almost 30 years in the British Parliament. Dens of iniquity, I regarded them. Little did I know what iniquity was taking place within. Just last week, another Conservative MP was revealed or alleged, he's not been named, but he was alleged to have spiked the drinks of 3 other members of Parliament before sexually assaulting them. In Parliament. One of them woke up from a stupor to discover this member of Parliament licking his nipples. It's always been a mystery to me why God gave men nipples, but now we know why. It was for the edification of Conservative MPs in the bars of the House of Commons when they're supposed to be at work. There's a by-election in Wakefield where the Conservative Member of Parliament was recently convicted of sexual assault against a 15-year-old boy. There's another by-election in the West Country where another Conservative MP was forced to resign, having been found watching pornography on his telephone in the chamber of the House of Commons. He claimed he'd been merely Googling tractors, and up came, well, not tractors. Although he said the second and third time that he logged on, he was guilty of watching pornography in the chamber of the House of Commons itself. Our Parliament has become an Augean stable, and there's no Hercules to sweep it. It has become a sink of corruption and vice, not to mention utter incompetence, cluelessness, in one blunder after another. I don't know what we can do about it. One thing I do know is that if you keep on voting for the same old, you're going to get the same old in return. I've spoken for 34 minutes. I better allow you to have your say. Simon, has anyone been writing in? Is anyone watching? Pork Chop says to me, it appears to me the biggest threat to safety and humanity are the bureaucrats within the United States Department of State. Yes, them and all the other departments, I must say. Owen McGrandles says, have you received your silver memento from YouTube yet, Gigi? No, I haven't actually got to the 200,000. Here's a mystery, and if you're listening, YouTube, and I presume you are, as this is exclusively on your platform, I never got a plaque when I got to 100,000 subscribers. I don't know if it was personal. I took it personally, to be honest, because I keep seeing you showcasing other people getting plaques when they reached 100,000. Well, I am a kick in the backside away from 200,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. If you're watching this now, please subscribe. Get me to the 200,000 so that I can get, finally, a plaque. I'm sure they'll give me one for 200,000. Brian Waite says a few thousand Azov prisoners of war documented by the Red Cross. Ukraine has reported only 542 documented by the Ukraine agency. Zelensky says at least 1,000. This begs the question, is Ukraine killing Russian prisoners of war? Well, there have been documented cases of that, as well as documented cases of torture and the shooting in the knee of Russian prisoners of war. I've no doubt that there is brutality taking place on both sides in this conflict. I want this conflict to end as quickly as possible. Zelensky should be allowed by the United States to go to the negotiating table and bring about a political and diplomatic end to this conflict, which need never have started in the first place. I didn't want this war. I hate this war. I actually made a fool of myself publicly, online, on air, by saying there would be no Russian invasion of the Ukraine, because that's what I sincerely believed. But this war need never have started. If the Minsk II agreements that the Ukrainian government signed and which were guaranteed by the German and French governments had been implemented, then absolutely none of this need to have happened. Not a single shot needed to have been fired. Let me see. Caroline says, I'm the Caroline that got Gigi to address my big brother Peter on Sunday. He has now seen Ukraine on fire. Thank you, Caroline, in Coatbridge, my old stamping ground, or one of them. And Jeanette Hope says, George, your passion on what Americans are going through brings me to tears. Me too, Jeanette. It's almost impossible, as I say, as the father of young children of exactly the age of these children that were murdered. It's almost impossible for me to cover this story. It is beyond horror. It is beyond fiction. It is truly, madly, unbelievably, unspeakably evil. And something has to be done. No more thoughts and prayers, please. Please, spare the families your empty thoughts and prayers that God long ago stopped listening to. Let's see. Starship Alien says 40 billion has gone to the most corrupt country in Europe. Americans, deal with it. But it does fire up your war machine. Good luck with that. Imagine. $40 billion Joe Biden has sent to a country, Ukraine, which was indeed regularly regarded before the war as the most corrupt country in Europe and one of the most corrupt countries in the world, and with which the Biden family has been in a corrupt relationship for an entire decade. 40 billion of American tax dollars have been given to the most corrupt country in Europe when people in America can't get baby formula? Seriously? Baby formula? They say they're pro-life, some of them, hypocrite. Darren Donnelly says, George, a wonderfully eloquent show tonight. Thank you. Well, maybe I needed the break, Darren. Thanks for your kind words. Let's see what else. P. Craig says, the roots of the Second Amendment are slavery and genocide of the native population. Well, quite so. America is stained by the original sin of violence, of course. It killed 100 million of the original inhabitants of America. So it was built on ethnic cleansing, on genocide, and on slavery. And after slavery, Jim Crow and segregation. Segregation of a kind which continues today. Uzlim says they're only pro-life until babies are born, and then it's fine for them to die immediately. Very well put, indeed. Hypocrites. They're against abortion, but in favor of the death penalty. They're against abortion, but in favor of killing children in various wars around the world. They killed more than 500,000 children in Iraq. Many of them pro-life, the politicians that did that. 500,000 children they killed in Iraq. And you can almost hear screaming in hell Madeleine Albright, who described it all as a price worth paying. Don't forget that. Hugo says, China, please never collect on the money lent to this war regime in Washington. Otherwise, we are done. America owes China $1 trillion. Just think about that. Let's see. Swift BMF says, Galloway, like Chris Williamson, seems to think only government thugs should have guns. You clearly weren't listening to anything that I said. You half-wit. You're banned. Get off. Jim R. says, I think the USA glorifies their weapons. In every town, in front of every VFW post, you'll see some military instrument of death. The USA was founded with the gun. Any more where that came from? Uzlim again says, I'd rather focus on the cost of living crisis they've created, their warmongering, their trampling of civil liberties, and so on. The parties are bad, but not as bad as what they are distracting from. My own thoughts entirely, and my own words just a few minutes ago. This is Crick D. Says the nipple has crumbled many an empire. I'll take your word for that. And Pittsburgh Dude 87 says we need to address economic and mental health crises, driving shooters, and reduce profiteering of the gun industry, merchants of death. Mexico is suing American gun companies for arming killer cartels. A good point. The National Rifle Association, which gives these millions of dollars to right-wing politicians in America, used to be funded by its members. It's now 80% funded by the arms manufacturers of America. We're doing quite well out of the war also. Muhammad says they give you a badge of honor, brother. If evil media owners are censoring you and always fighting your channel, you must be doing something good. Thank you, Muhammad. This is a reference to my legal action, which began in Dublin today against Twitter for the false labeling of my Twitter account as Russian state-affiliated media. And I'll keep you posted on that case as it continues. Any others? Rickbo Sports says, George Galloway salutes as ever. Question, how reasonable is it for me to question how mainstream media debate Partygate yet fail to discuss the Ukrainian situation? It's staggering. Staggering indeed it is. And it's quite clear that the future of Boris Johnson has completely divided the British ruling elite in a way that the conflict in Ukraine does not divide them at all. Hence, you've got people appearing tooth and claw to be tearing at Boris Johnson over a slice of birthday cake, but nothing, zero opposition to the government's policy towards the war in Ukraine. Gemma Jane Brooks donates £17.99. Gemma, thank you for that. Keep up the great work, says Gemma. Gemma, God bless you. We will get back to a Wednesday night moats. That doesn't mean we'll scrap the Galloway show. Maybe I'll make that, I don't know, a Tuesday or a Thursday or a Friday, if there's a demand for it, because it's a slightly different dynamic, don't you think, this show? And some people have expressed the view that they like this format. And I've always got plenty to say, as you can imagine. So please donate so that we can get the Wednesday night moats back. EISIS on tour says public inquiry into electricity prices. Same companies selling electricity cheaper in Europe. Why? Because they're crooks. This electricity and gas and water all used to be owned by us in Britain. Now it's owned by private companies. And often those companies are state companies from other countries. You couldn't make that up. We privatized our electricity so that the French state electricity company could own our electricity. It's the economics and politics of the madhouse. Withered City Explorers, how exotic names these are. Arrest and investigate all Tory and Labour MPs, seize their assets, get out of NATO and ditch our nukes and use the money to rebuild our nation and have someone in charge that's for the common person. Well, that's a radical manifesto. I don't endorse every dot and comma of it, but it's not a bad platform. If you want to run on it, probably be quite popular. A different point of view donates 10 New Zealand dollars. God bless you for that. Thanks. My tarot reading says the Ukraine war will come to an end soon. Things may be happening that we can't see on the surface. I agree with you. I think by August, Ukraine will effectively be partitioned into two countries, East Ukraine and West Ukraine. And then there'll have to be a reckoning. The European countries which have opposed the war will have to decide whether they're going to continue the economic war. Russia doesn't mind. The ruble is currently the best performing currency in the world. Let me say that again. The ruble is currently the best performing currency in the world. Russia makes real things and extracts real things from its own territory. It's not dependent on other people's territory, and it's not making its money from casino economics. It makes real things, it extracts real things, and it can sell those things to the East if the West don't want it or don't want to pay for it in Russian currency. Let's see. David K, I see, is given 20 US dollars. Thank you, David. Beer and Flies gave $49.99. Wow. Thank you very much indeed. I really, really appreciate that. At this rate, we'll reach our targets. Hope you're looking forward to lockdowns to happen with monkeypox, says Calamity. Well, Calamity, I can't believe it's monkeypox season already. I've only just taken down my Ukraine decorations, as I said on Sunday on Moats. It's such a good joke, I thought I'd say it twice. SC says the US pressured China to sanction Russia and stand against Russia. China responded that you want us to help you to destroy Russia so you can then come after us. Quite. They must think the Chinese are terribly stupid people, when in fact they're terribly, terribly smart people. Jack Klugman, aha, famous name. Who would have thought that Kissinger would be calling for de-escalation and Bernie Sanders votes to send $40 billion to arm Nazis? Who indeed, Jack? Now, Henry Kissinger, age 99, he is age 99, I can safely say is at least the most experienced foreign policy man on the planet. He has to be at 99. He's calling for the de-escalation of the war and the squad and their grandfather, Bernie Sanders, are throwing scores of billions of dollars onto the battlefield. Never saw that coming, did you? Just Be Kind says, I love George's rolled R's. Well, you say that. Once upon a time, the mother of all talk shows briefly transferred to WBAI radio station on the Pacifica network in then Wall Street, New York City. And I did the show from New York on WBAI. And American ladies used to call up the show almost every week and say, I don't have a question, Mr. Galloway, but could you just say the word murder? And I would lean into the microphone and say, murder. And they'd giggle and hang up. I'm not joking. That used to happen every week. Michael Julian says, Galloway, is the Anglo-American imperial machine a fascist empire, like the head of the Russian security services explicitly alluded as Russia's real battle leader that they will defeat? I don't believe yet that the US and Britain are fascist countries, but they're definitely on the road that leads, if we don't stop it, to fascism. And there's absolutely no doubt that the war drive is driven by the United States and Great Britain, principally. Other satrapies are available and involved, but Britain and the United States are undoubtedly the biggest problem in the world today. La Chang gives 20 Australian dollars. Thank you very much indeed for that. And hallelujah for the defeat of the Morrison government down under in the elections last weekend. Not that I have any illusions in Albo, but I'm going to hold him to the words he used about Julian Assange when he pledged before the election that he would do everything he could to get Julian returned to his home country of Australia. Come on, Albo. We're all waiting for that. You'll be doing the whole world a service if you do. Dante Alighieri says, this format has a certain underground subversive resistance, je ne sais quoi, perfectly aligned with the Soviet microphone hidden under George's hat. Well, Radio Rebelde, anyone? Cam, 35mm, gives $5. Thank you, Cam. George, did you see Eric Ten Hag's first presser as United manager? Finally, we're getting a manager worth his salt. I did, and I should, because my wife is here and she was born and brought up in Amsterdam, pronounce his name properly. For me, there'll always be Ajax, but she always corrects me and tells me it's Ajax. And Eric Ten Hag is it Ten Hag? Ten Hag. Eric Ten Hag is how we actually pronounce his name. But I think for the terracings, he'll always be Eric Ten Hag. I'm very impressed. I wanted him all along. We finally got him, but my goodness, does he have a job to do. Tell me that Jose Mourinho won the Europa Conference League tonight. He was leading 1-0 with Roma. With 4 minutes of injury time to go when I had to come on the air. Please tell me that he won. Mark Lane gives $4.99. Thank you, Mark. Much appreciated, dear brother. Please give before the end of the show or after the end of the show on YouTube, on the Super Chat, or on the website, which is Moats.tv. 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 Then go to the donate button. Darren Butler says, Boris Johnson makes the UK a legitimate target and nobody says a word. Well, I pray that nobody targets us, because if they do, there'll certainly be no more shows. There'll be no more Britain. Now look at that. Tarla Burke gives $49.99. super sticker. Thank you, Tola. And oh my goodness, Fragile gives NOK 100. God bless you. Thank you. Hope you had a nice day in Serbia. Serbia, he says. Thank you for your clip from Belgrade. I visited the very tasteful, classy resting place of my comrade, Josip Broz Tito, the freedom fighter, the liberator, and the builder of socialist Yugoslavia. I visited his mausoleum in the House of Flowers, and very beautiful indeed it was. Unforgettable. Thank you, brother, for that very kind donation. Can this be true? Lachan gives 200 Australian dollars. Thank you so much for all the late nights to the husband and wife team towards a bottle of nice wine, mate. We don't drink alcohol, actually. It's a very, very kind thought. We only actually drink tea, but God bless you. Thank you. Kenny Given, £5. Thanks, Kenny. George, will you be going to see the new Elvis biopic when it comes out next month? Listen, Kenny, when I was 11 years old, I had one badge. It was metallic, red and silver, and it had a lot of words on it. Everyone used to stop and slowly read them. It was the Elvis Presley Fan Club of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. It gave the full title, and it was one of my proudest possessions. I love Elvis, especially early Elvis in the Sun recording studios, first of all. Roma 1-1-0. Thank you, Marco Volkovic. I'm so happy about that. I love Jose Mourinho, and I love Tammy Abraham, and I really am happy that they have finished, I think, in the top four in La Liga, in Serie A, and they have won now the Europa Conference League. And Chris Smalling would have been a better centre-back from Manchester United than the two that they've been playing put together. We gave them away. Any others? I've got 2 minutes maybe. Gigi is talking softer because his children are asleep in the other room. Believe it or not, that is true. But I'm also running out of voice. I've also got the cat. At one moment, I was talking to you in all seriousness, and my cat leapt up on this table here and was inches away from being on screen, which would have been particularly inappropriate. William Martin says, a marriage between business and government is what fascism is. We are there, George. The people have no say in government here now. Well, we could have some say if we took it, but we don't. I tried. I gave my best shot in the by-election in Batley and Spen almost exactly a year ago. I got 22% of the vote. I got 8,000 votes, more than 8,000 votes. But it seems that people don't want me in the parliament, and I just have to accept that. You get the parliament you vote for at the end of the day. Zukski gives £5. Thanks, Zook. Evening, George. Have the horses been kind to you lately? Great show again, George. Thank you. You know what? I'm so broke, I can't afford to back the horses. But I hope eventually to get back to my playful little punts. I know about certain things, you see. I know about politics, I know about football, and I know about horse racing. So why not use my knowledge for a modest wager? I know I shouldn't, but I never bet when I'm angry. Verlith gives 20 euros. Thank you very much. I knew you were real and understood politics the moment you said in public who the real leader in Lebanon was. Love your show. Messaging and delivery of these topics. You are the truth. Love from Beirut, Cork, Ireland, Mark. God bless you. God bless Rebel Cork also. Well, it's been marvelous for me. I hope it was for you. If it was, please come back to the mother of all talk shows on Sunday at 7 p.m., not just on YouTube, but on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Twitch, on Instagram, on TikTok, and everywhere. TikTok's our biggest growth area, I should say. The mother of all talk shows is going from strength to strength, but it would have collapsed but for your generous support over the 5-6 weeks that we badly needed you. I'm going to kick off my shoes on my Patreon channel now and take some questions from my Patreon supporters who keep me going, actually for a little while, the only income I had. And so I owe them. And so I'm going down now. If you want to follow me, it's patreon.com/George Galloway. Until Sunday, on the mother of all talk shows, this is George Galloway and Gayatri and the cat, whose name is Chess, wishing you a very good night.